What's going on, everybody? My name is Justin Godsey for the SportsBeatNetwork.com. Thank you so much for checking out tonight's video. Tonight, guys, we're here talking about the Buffalo Bills as quarterback Kyle Orton has decided to officially hang him up after an excellent 10-year career in the National Football League. He has spent time with the Buffalo Bills this past year, on the Dallas Cowboys from 2012 to 2013, a year with the Kansas City Chiefs, as well as the Denver Broncos for a few years. And, we all know how he started into the NFL with the Chicago Bears from 2005 all the way to 2008 before jumping to Denver, Kansas City, Dallas, and Buffalo. Now, this comes as a complete shock to me because I felt that 2014 was a year where Kyle Orton really felt at home. The Buffalo Bills, after having a extremely slow start to the year, losing, I think they were like, 2-3 to start the year or some sort of, mistake like that. They were starting extremely slow. I've always expected the Buffalo Bills to have that breakout year. They have an excellent defense. They have great wide receivers. They have Sammy Watkins in company with them. Mike Williams as well. He's no longer with the team anymore. This team was going down as one of the, in the early goings of the year, was going down as one of the biggest disappointments. But, once they decided to bench E.J. Manuel, I want to say following that Chargers loss, Kyle Orton came in and just completely went to work. At the conclusion of the year, the Buffalo Bills were always in it. From the time that Kyle Orton, picked up and they started winning more games and going on winning streaks, the Buffalo Bills were a team that were in it till the end. They were very much destined to really either, win that division championship or get in as a wild card, because I've always felt that, if Kyle Orton was to play an entire full season with the team, I can see excellent turnaround in his kind of game, because Kyle Orton has never been in a situation where he has played an entire year and has played such a big pivotal role, whether it's, bad pieces around him, looking into 2005 when he first broke into the NFL. It wasn't, the greatest outing for him, but then again, he was only a rookie at the time. He was very inexperienced. He finished the year with 9 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, for a rookie quarterback, and he would not get another opportunity to officially, play a full season until 2009, where, the Denver Broncos had such a great season, and they had, started very strong, and then they officially, fell off at the end of the year. That was probably his best year in 2009, where he passed for 21 touchdowns and only threw 12 interceptions. So, following that, he's had a great streak with Denver, 2010 as well, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, a little bit more accurate that year, but following that, he tended to be on a really sketchy end. The Denver Broncos ended up, going down to the decision, going with Tim Tebow and everything like that. That ended up, landing him in Kansas City. His season was cut short in Kansas City. I think it was with a thumb injury, and then from there, in Kansas City, released him. They got Alex Smith, or not Alex Smith. They went on to have, a plethora of other quarterbacks, with Matt Castle, which would eventually lead to Alex Smith coming to Kansas City. He went on to go play for Dallas for a while. Then he lands in Buffalo. Like I said, he's always had that, sketchy road where, you have a lot of success from Kyle Orton, but he does not follow through at the end. But this was the year where Kyle Orton, officially, stepped up, and he felt really at home with the Buffalo Bills. I honestly felt that the Buffalo Bills have found their starting quarterback for the next couple of years, because I think that, Kyle Orton was just so fed up in a decision of being a backup quarterback, year in and year out, not getting a legitimate option to really step up and play. So, I can understand to the point where, that could be a big factor into his retirement, but he said, personally, he walked into the office of the Buffalo Bills and, said that, this is a family decision. We all know about, his, recent discussions of retirement, following the 2013 year. So, it all comes as to a big, surprise to me that, after coming off a very, interesting year and much more of a comeback year for him, he's back into the limelight again, that he would retire after just one season with the Bills. I think that, this now leaves the Bills with a lot of question marks going forward with the quarterback position, because E.J. Manuel is not a starting caliber quarterback in this league right now. He's a good name to have as your backup, but he's not going to go out there and, officially wow you and win you 10 games, 11 games. He's going to go out there and win you at least a minimum of 8, and maybe even 7 at the least. So that's what you're pretty much getting at E.J. Manuel. So this Buffalo Bills squad is now back to phase 1 as they were just a couple of years ago, talking about on who's going to be the new starting quarterback. Like I said, this team is really I want to say pretty much pissed through a couple of quarterbacks already, and now they're back to phase one, and they do have a couple of options. You can always go into the 2015 draft, but the biggest problem is that in 2014 they traded into the first round, or they traded up into the draft in order to get Sammy Watkins, in which they had to feature their first round selection in the 2015 draft. So that is really going to kill the Buffalo Bills, because if they knew that Kyle Orton was going to retire following this year, I would expect the Buffalo Bills to really attack it early, before the NFL trade deadline, that they could potentially end up trading someone huge for a first round selection. But how many times have you actually seen that happen? But you know what, the Buffalo Bills are now working against the clock. They do have a lot of time to start talking with teams that are willing to trade their first round selection in order to draft a quarterback, because when you look into the 2015 draft, there's a lot of excellent quarterbacks, name wise. You got to look at guys like Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. If both of those quarterbacks decide to declare for the 2015 draft, those are going to be the first two quarterbacks taken off the board. I do have Marcus Mariota going to Tampa Bay. I do have Jameis Winston on his way going to the Tennessee Titans. But beyond that, there's still a lot of great names on this market for NFL caliber quarterbacks. Now we're talking about Brett Hundley out of UCLA, Dak Prescott out of Mississippi State, who just shined this past year, and Bryce Petty from Baylor. I mean, all three of those quarterbacks are big options for the Buffalo Bills. But if you really look at it, the Buffalo Bills, compared to their dual threat quarterback in E.J. Manuel, compared to the pro style quarterback of Kyle Orton, you find a lot more success with quarterbacks who stay in the pocket and look for the players downfield, look for the receivers downfield. And Kyle Orton did that. Look what he did with Sammy Watkins. He turned Sammy Watkins, after having an extremely slow start to the year, he turned Sammy Watkins into the next best thing. At the conclusion of the year, he was one of the best wide receivers for the 2014 year. So when you really look at it, the Buffalo Bills could be targeting a pocket quarterback. There are a couple of quarterbacks that can really come to mind. One of them is Shane Carden from East Carolina, and also Bryce Petty, who is personally my favorite to go to the Buffalo Bills, because those are the two big standout, pocket quarterbacks in this year's draft. When you look into dual threat quarterbacks, they tend to run the ball a little bit, and when you look at the kind of wide receiving core that's currently in development in Buffalo, you really want to have a quarterback that can legitimately throw to the receivers, not just having to be on the run and not use your full offense to your exposure. You're just going to keep on running the ball, and you're going to have one of the most interesting rushing attacks in the league, with your quarterback being a dual threat quarterback. Look at E.J. Manuel. He ran and ran and ran and ran. He threw the ball, which was a great trait for him. It wasn't as solid and not as much as smooth as it was, but you get what you get out of E.J. Manuel. Like I said, he's not an NFL starting caliber quarterback. He is a backup now. So I really want to see this Buffalo Bills team get back into the first round this year. Even though they do have Bryce Petty and Shane Carden, a couple of sites have Bryce Petty going into the third round. I have Bryce Petty going early into the second. I think that he's a legitimate talent in the NFL. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to be very, very desperate for getting a quarterback. I think that when you look at this past year, there are two quarterbacks above Bryce Petty, performance-wise, in Dak Prescott and Brett Hundley. I just cannot say that, they're going to end up going into the draft. I would like to stay away from Brett Hundley, who is coming off a relatively, down year at UCLA. UCLA as a whole, even though they did get away with some big victories, they played very sloppy, and it really affected Brett Hundley's, performance during 2014. So that's going to be a big factor, a big pivotal factor. But Dak Prescott's a big option, but he is legitimately up in the air. We don't know exactly what he's going to end up doing. I know he only wants to be drafted in the first round. If he's not drafted in the first round, then all of a sudden he's going to go back to Mississippi State. So that's going to be a big problem. But Bryce Petty is ready. He's a redshirt senior. Following the RG3 and Nick Florence time at Baylor, Bryce Petty was always demanded into the third string quarterback role. Once RG3 was there, once Nick Florence was there, then you had Bryce Petty, a quarterback who was a third string quarterback and no one knew much about him. A guy who came into the ranks into Baylor and really just dominated and really took that team by storm. Took them to the Fiesta Bowl. They weren't successful against UCF, but he still took them to the Fiesta Bowl and has really turned that Baylor program completely around, which is always great. I've always liked to see the success from Baylor. So Bryce Petty is that quarterback that can be on the legitimate radar for the Buffalo Bills. Shane Carden, on the other hand, due to the inexperience, I think Shane Carden is going to end end up being a backup quarterback. I think that if the Buffalo Bills are willing to commit to E.J. Manuel just for 1 year so that Shane Carden can just develop under, an offense for the Buffalo Bills, I think that Shane Carden could be starting possibly around 2016, 2017, whichever route they would like to go. But needless to say, I still think that Shane Carden could be that development quarterback that they can stash away, and possibly get in probably around the 3rd or 4th round. I want to say 5th round at the latest for Shane Carden. I don't think he's going to go beyond that. I think he's a sure thing who completely turned around quarterback from his time at East Carolina. That team did very well in 2015 with Shane Carden leading the way. But if the Buffalo Bills do not want to go and address the quarterback situation in the draft, it was just announced just about 3 minutes ago, as I'm still talking about this video, that quarterback from the Washington Redskins, Kirk Cousins, saying that if Robert Griffin III is going to be the starting quarterback for the 2015 year, that he would like to be traded. Now, yes, I know what you guys are also thinking. Kirk Cousins. Why the hell do we want Kirk Cousins if you're if you're going to end up being a Buffalo Bills fan? Kirk Cousins is a great pocket quarterback. Look at Kyle Orton. I'm not comparing Kirk Cousins over to Kyle Orton. I'm just saying that pocket quarterbacks benefit a whole lot into a system in Buffalo. You don't see a lot of great, look at E.J. Manuel's time. That's a big prime example. He had his time. He had a couple of, ups and downs, but mainly a lot of downs. But, needless to say, if you have a pocket quarterback in Kirk Cousins, I'm not saying he's going to go out there and really, shine and win you, 12 games or 11 games. He's going to give you a better option to really, hopefully work for the year. If it doesn't work out, you can always have you'll always have the option to either release him or potentially trade him for a couple of draft picks. It's just called experimenting with other quarterbacks. Then they can end up going into the 2016 draft and, hopefully looking for some luck there, because there's a couple of interesting names going into the 2016 draft, such as, guys like Christian Hackenberg, Connor Cook, Kevin Hogan, Cody Kessler, Braxton Miller. There's a couple of big names there that could potentially help out this team, in the next 2 years for the 2016 draft, and we can really, benefit from the help that they could produce to an offense. So there's a lot of experimenting that the Buffalo Bills now have to address, with Kyle Orton being gone. So what are your guys' options about that? What do you think the Buffalo Bills will be doing? No Kyle Orton. Does this mean that they're going to be addressing it in the draft? Will they go out there and get Kirk Cousins from the Washington Redskins? There's just a lot of options right now on the Bills' plate right now. The offseason is now in full effect for the teams that did not get into the playoffs. My name is Justin Godsey for the SportsBeatNetwork.com, and I'll catch you guys